Good evening, viewers. On tonight's show we're going to interview Mr Matthews.
Thank you, viewers. You are so kind.
I understand, Mr Matthews, you're very interested in making really bad camcorder films. Now give the viewers some tips on how to do this.
Well, I run courses called uncams. They're popular with budding filmmakers and ensure that nobody will ever want to watch their films.
Okay, fine. Now let's start with the basics. What equipment is the budding filmmaker going to need?
First bit of advice is to get a really old camcorder, as the older ones are the best, so they say. Also, don't get a tripod, as camera shake helps ensure your footage is really wobbly and very unprofessional. Also, this is a really super tip if you're filming jelly.
What does the budding filmmaker understand by the term focal point?
That's a technical term referring to a camcorder focus group focused on focal points.
So what is the point of that?
Well, I'm not sure, because focal points are a bit of a fuzzy area.
What is the white balance?
It's where the studio light wobbles precariously on a wobbly stand.
Okay, now let's talk about lighting in general.
Well, it's best to shoot a movie at night in total darkness.
Why is that?
Because that way you can save on lighting costs, and film critics will not be able to criticise your film because they won't be able to see anything.
What if you have to shoot a movie in daylight though?
Well, then you should always film an open window against a bright background. That way the person or persons being filmed will not be identifiable against the bright background, especially useful if the actors or actresses are a bit shy.
Right. What about filming weddings?
The secret of filming weddings is to upset the bride by, say, telling her what a mistake she's making, and talking about football. Always goes down well.
Interesting. Now let's discuss some other tried and tested filmmaking techniques.
One thing I always suggest is to show your camcorder that you're in control.
How do you do that?
Well, let it slip out of your hand a few times and use a flat battery.
Interesting. Any more tips?
Use the zoom too much and never reshoot a scene. This saves time and will virtually guarantee you have at least one awful scene in your film.
Right. What about filters?
No, forget them.
Okay. Now tell us, Mr Matthews, about tilting and panning.
You must never tilt. You must always stand up straight. And if you try panning, it's best to use a saucepan.
Right. Anything else?
Never label any rushes. That gives your film a sense of unpredictability. Your footage will be so jumbled up, you or your viewers will never know what's going to happen next.
I can well imagine that is a really useful technique for horror films.
Yeah, and comedies.
Not labelling rushes takes us on to editing.
What's that?
Putting the film bits in the right order.
Oh yeah, don't bother with that. It'll make your film even more boring.
What about titles at the beginning and credits at the end of your film?
No need. Your film will be so awful, people know it's been done by you.
What about extras?
Be rude to them and never give them any money. In fact, it's a good idea to make them pay you. That way you'll have fewer overheads, be able to finish earlier and have more money to take them down to the pub afterwards for a drink after the shoot.
Sounds great. What about shortcuts with audio, sound effects and voiceover?
Use an old camcorder that makes a whining sound when the tape goes round, particularly useful if you're looking for a voiceover artist with a squeaky voice.
Anything else?
Always look away from the camera. In fact, looking at an adjacent blank wall is a good idea. Also look totally unrelaxed and look as though you're very unsure of what you're doing. And another thing, if you're reading scripts off paper, make sure they're clearly visible in the film, thus ensuring a really amateurish movie.
Okay, well thank you very much Mr Matthews for enlightening us with your tips for poor quality filmmaking.
Well, I do hope so, and don't forget, if there's an uncam training course near you, then join it and take your filmmaking to a new low.
what can I say? This guy's a genius. I think we've all learned something tonight. So good night, viewers. Good night.
Good night.